Catus Maximus here. I like making these videos. There's not much to say about a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar. Standard length 15 inches. The standard length for 1/2-inch breaker bars from most companies. As you can see, I have a little selection to compare from here. This isn't all of them, but I like collecting different brands. 15 inches is the general length. This is an Indestro Super 3222H. Picked this up because I thought, yeah, it's a little bit funky, but it's still more than good enough condition to add to the collection. Now we're looking at the handle. Wish the knurling was a bit heavier on this. Not super great. Like on this Williams S41A, I really like a heavy knurling, just like that. So wish Indestro would have done a little better job on the knurling. If you're looking at these old breaker bars, one thing when you're take a quick look down the column or the beam. I've seen a lot of breaker bars that I've ended up passing up on because they haven't broken, but they have been bent. I've seen ones that were just like badly curved over or were run over or something, and that really disappoints me. So I'd rather have one that had some blemishes on the chrome. What I can say about the chrome plating is this is wear from sitting in a toolbox. Really has been beaten up, and the chrome is stuck to it pretty well. So definitely was a quality tool. Really do like old Indestro stuff. Pretty standard anvil. Back in the old days, they didn't have, the pins weren't screws that they were removable. Instead, they just used a solid rod that they kind of swaged over and then ground. One way you can really tell, this one's had some torque put on it, but it's not too bad. On these old styles, if they've really been abused, it can spread the forks, and then you'll see this weird lip and mushrooming form around the edge of the pin. And it's another telltale sign. That isn't to say that many manufacturers have, for instance, Proto, even to this day, still just uses a through pin. It just isn't flush ground and chrome plated, kind of like, and swaged, kind of like this old school one. Anyway, ball detent. Nice centering for the retention. Good protrusion. Wouldn't say that it's snap-on level retention, but this is a pretty heavy, 36 millimeter socket. Holds it up pretty well, so I'm more than satisfied by that. Now, one thing I was going to mention that I like the most is the fact that this head right here really is pretty compact. I like this kind of trident style where it tapers in, so you have a lot of material right here, right where you need it. That's where the most strain on the forks is. But we can see that where the pin is and where the anvil is, it's really close to where the root of the cutout, so there's less leverage that the anvil has against the forks. Would have been nice. This anvil, as we can see, it is a little bit wider around the area where there is the pin. It's about 5/8 right there. But it isn't something like, say, old school snap-ons where they had the big round machined area. This is one of my favorites. Breaker bars, this snap-on. It's absolutely beautiful. That's the GS15B. We do have examples like on this old Williams, the S41A, where we have just a big machined area, big thick pin, and even though they do have, if we compare to the Indestro, quite a bit more length on the forks, they kind of make up for it by having just a big wide area on the anvil, and the fact that it's really wide this way. I do like that it does have a ball detent with a little divot right in the back, so that you can, and that's kind of the deal why these are called spinner handles, and it's surprising how many don't have this. Indestro knew it 50 years ago, is once you break the fastener, kind of holds the socket straight, so then you can actually spin it out. That's the whole purpose to it. If we maybe compare to, now Proto's been making them just like this. The only difference between a more modern Proto and one made 50, 60 years ago is the fact that Proto went from this flush type pin design to just a through pin. Otherwise, Protos have been virtually unchanged for probably 70, 80 years. And we can see that the Indestro really isn't too bad. Maybe the anvil isn't quite as strong as the Proto, but I'm suspecting it's pretty darn close. Do like that compact head design. It's even more compact than the Proto, comparing to some of its other contemporaries. We have the Powercraft here. And we can see that this head is actually just a little bit wider than the Powercraft. This Powercraft also interestingly used nested roll pins. I don't really understand why they did that. So I think it definitely was a little bit better than the Powercraft. Once again, this Indestro kind of sets itself apart by just having probably one of the most compact heads I've seen in a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar. And I know I'm blabbing a lot. I'll finish this up. We have the New Britain 57, which is another very beautifully made breaker bar here. And we can see that this Indestro, compared to the New Britain just uses a friction pin that's held in. But even this New Britain, so many of these don't actually, I don't think any of the ones that I have on this table, the Proto, Powercraft, New Britain, Armstrong, Williams, Snap-on, none of them have this little detent, and I just don't know why more manufacturers don't do that. Now we can see this head as compared to the New Britain, it's still more compact than the New Britain. Although the New Britain does use a pretty wide pin and a pretty wide buckle at the base, so maybe the New Britain is just a little bit stronger. And just to compare, this is the heaviest duty 1/2 inch drive breaker bar I own, which is the Armstrong 12-918, one of the last of the American made ones. And if we look, we can see just how much thicker the beam is, the Armstrong is, versus the Indestro. And we can see up here that the Armstrong just threw a huge amount of steel at the head. And that's kind of like the funny comparison here. If we align the center line of the pins, we can just see that the Armstrong just has just an absolutely huge amount of material. The Armstrong, I have no doubt that it's the square that will break. Anyway, just wanted to do a little comparison, just kind of showing this neat old Indestro standard length 15 inch 1/2 inch drive breaker bar, and the fact that it may not be the heaviest duty of all the contemporary manufacturers of hand tools and 1/2 inch drive breaker bars, the way Indestro was respected. And forgetting what I'm saying here, they did a pretty good job of pretty symmetrically grinding this, so there isn't like a big lot slide where it looks like the pin is off to one side or the other. So good quality control, and they did set themselves apart by just trying to have a very compact head so that if you're using smaller size sockets, it just interferes a lot less. So anyway, just hadn't had an Indestro unit to add to my collection, and now I do. I wanted to share it with you all. This is once again, the 3222H. Really appreciate everybody who supports the channel. See you next time.